My name is Jim Tuman, Epsilon Lambda 64. Um, as I'm approaching my 60th year with the fraternity, I realize I have so much valuable information I want to share as a legacy piece, and I was encouraged to do this video as a direct result of that. I was um, I the keynote speaker at Academy 3 times and at Ecclesia twice. I was the cover story on the national magazine, and I have spoken to 111 chapters all over the United States and Canada. I've done more than 100 pig dinners, and I have been infused with the fraternity and a great love for the fraternity, and I want to see it continue, and I want to see it without obstacles and problems and difficulties. And I'm doing this video because of the knowledge and wisdom that I gleaned talking to all of these different brothers, all over the place. Equally important on the other side, I've spoken to 2 million students in more than 2,000 schools in every state and 11 foreign countries. I've been honored from presidents to heads of state to on the floor of Congress to key legislatures around the country. So I've had a wide span of insights into kids' issues. I was on the cutting edge of mental health, and my strong suit is I worked for a very long time with teen suicide. Now, one of the challenges that I have seen in going to, you know, um, all over and visiting these chapters, one of the biggest challenges I faced was, you know, the loss of life that I saw. And it was needless. And we didn't have to, it didn't have to happen. But like most young people, the belief was in our fraternity, it's never going to happen to me. It's always going to happen to the next person. I'm not going to be the one that is responsible for somebody's death. And because of that, we find ourselves in a situation where it's difficult as a fraternity to be able to, you know, deal with this stuff on a proactive basis. What I'm going to do as we move through this talk is to give you significant ways that you can create a proactive approach as opposed to a reactive approach. Because reactive doesn't do much. It's after the fact. And as I've learned on so many occasions, all it does is band-aid, and all it does is, create, question marks in people's lives. So back to, the needless deaths that I saw. I was speaking at Lehigh, um, and I remember this so clearly. And when I was putting this talk together, it just flooded through my mind. And it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had arrived at the campus, and I was speaking to the chapter, and then later on that night on campus. And I went over to the fraternity house, and as I got there, there was groups of people around the fraternity house, walking around, going back to the woods behind the house. As it turned out, the president of the fraternity had hung himself from a branch on the back of the house. And all the kids were walking around gawking to see him and to see his condition and his set of circumstances. And nobody understood because he seemed to have everything. And that is always the amazing thing that I've discovered, that it's it's the it's people after the fact saying that person had it all. We don't understand it. But a lot of times people mask their feelings. And one of the things about fraternities are you're infusing a group of men who are coming together with all different histories, all different backgrounds, all different thought process. And they're coming with different reasons to join a fraternity. And many times the reasons are not healthy reasons. And one of the key things that I have prided myself on is a commitment to creating healthy environments and healthy families. And I believe so much it is possible. But the key to it is you've got to unmask some of the people. Now, I came into Epsilon Lambda and I was broken. My family was in the worst divorce, and I didn't want to ever go home. And I remember being there at Christmas time, and I was by myself in the chapter house. And I was crying on Christmas morning when I got up. And I thought, I am totally alone here. There's nobody that understands my problems. And out of the clear blue sky, somebody showed up at the house. And it turned out his circumstances were similar to mine. And I realized that here we had a bond that we had created that day by being able to share with each other. And we were different ethnic backgrounds and different ideologies and different points in our life. And yet here was our bond. And that drew me to the fraternity. I remember a situation at Colorado School of Mines where the president of the chapter at a chapter meeting that I attended because I was speaking there was screaming at the brothers. As it turned out, his mother had been sexually molested by a priest in the archdiocese there, and he was beyond comprehension. And he was the president, he was governing from this rage. And I thought, another example of the challenge of fraternity life. And how can we change the course for some of these kids? And how can we make it easier? And I've developed this ability to be able to create a safe space in a room. It could be thousands of young people, or it could be tens of young people. And I create this space where they feel safe to be themselves. And I want to be able to pass this along to, some of you who are up and coming in the fraternity or will watch this video years from now and say, I'm going to try to do that and I'm going to try to help out. Because so often, especially in fraternity life, they want to mask. They want to mask their feelings. They want to mask the circumstances of the chapter. In the president's room on a number of chapters as I was going there. And I would open up a closet door and there was a full bar, and here that, alcohol was, not permitted in this situation. And yet they did this. Hazing, as we know, still continues. It is part of the DNA of our of fraternity life. And as much as we like to say that we could cancel it, we can create, all of the ramifications not to do it. We could challenge everybody. We could put, restrictions and all kinds of things. It is going to happen. It is going to happen because, again, it is an integral part of fraternity life. And consequently, when you see these things happening, you understand that in some ways, we have to create ways of being able to see things before they happen, to create, a sense of futuring and put plans together to help some of these chapters deal with some of the problems that they are living with. At MSU, my alma mater, I used to get calls from Olin, the health center, that there was a young man calling and reaching out to me. And he was a legacy. His dad went to University of Michigan, and he was there as a legacy. And yet, he was being picked on a regular basis. He was effeminate, and he didn't meet the modeling of, other brothers. And every night they would write gay on his door, and they would tear him to shreds. And he was suicidal. He didn't want to live anymore. I mean, these were his brothers that were expected to care for him unconditionally. And yet he was being mocked and put down. And recently, Michigan State, of all the places, had that mass shooting. And there are students there that are still traumatized and will be the rest of their lives thinking they were going to die that night. So here's a practical approach to being proactive. One of the things that I ask in my brotherhood program is I ask a chapter in its entirety who was listening to my talk, raise your hand if you can walk through the doors of your chapter and feel like you are 100% accepted, you are unconditionally loved, brothers have your back, you could feel free to talk about anything to your brothers. And I started at 100%, and then I go down to 90%, no hands. And then I go down to 80%, no hands. And then I go down to 70, maybe a smattering, and 60 and 50 and more. And what that shows you is a glaring problem in that chapter. Because if brothers don't feel safe, they are not going to be committed to the chapter. They're going to put in their time. They're going to, they're going to do what they need to do. And many of them are not even going to even do that. But they're not going to be a part of this chapter. Wouldn't it be great if headquarters could project over the course of a year chapters that were at risk? I mean, some of you know because of blatant situations, but some it's being masked. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing over the years is, because of hazing and because of most recent situations, there was the MIT thing about 15 years ago. There's now the University of Missouri, that we are challenged. And one of the key things that we are dealing with is the potential lawsuits following some of the hazing and some of the repercussions that that brings. And I know for a fact, because I was told by a number of people, that insurance companies were starting to say, you know, we can't continue if these incidents continue to happen. So my goal is to help you stop these incidents and to be able to see some of the problems face first so that you can work around some of these issues. So using that technique of getting brothers to raise their hand, and they have to trust you, by the way, to do this. Raising their hand and saying, you know, that they don't feel safe and that they don't feel that people are there for them. One of my exercises in my keynote is called Best Friends. And I ask my audiences to raise their hand if they have a best friend and what that best friend means to them. And when they say why that person's a best friend, it's always under really phenomenal answers. You know, that they're unconditionally accepted, that best friend makes them laugh. Best friend is always there at times when they're needed. All of these things. And then I ask my audiences, why didn't you mention the grades that person had, the sports they played, the cars they drove, the money that they did or didn't have? And the answers are always, it's not important, it doesn't matter. And that is the same concept with our fraternity. For the brothers, we look at the optics sometimes more than the brother. And we get to know, we don't know the brother, and because of that, the optics rule. And that's what happened with Texas Tech. The longest program I've done 14 sessions with Texas Tech. It's the loneliest chapter in our system, and yet they're number one on campus in every category. And people are flooding to join them, and they had 200 brothers, and yet the brothers didn't know each other's names, never connected with the brothers. And see, that is just joining for the optics. It's not joining for the beauty of brotherhood, which is our mantra. Friendship, the sweetest influence. So I want to, as I exit, to leave something behind. I have a lot of letters that I have given to headquarters from brothers. A letter that, you know, I was at Bowling Green, and the next night, you know, or the night before I got there, the president took his life. I watched this continuously, this needless loss of life. And I'm fighting every day in my belief system to eliminate so much of that, or at least curb it. And yet, today, we see it more often. We see mass shootings where innocent people are in wrong place, wrong time. I came back from Columbine, and a reporter asked me, Jim, is this going to be a one and done? And I said, no. This is the beginning of an onslaught. And I didn't want to be right. And nobody, you know, I know that nobody believed that it was going to continue. And now we live with it every day, and we live in fear, and we live in a challenged world. I love this fraternity with all my heart, and I want to see it continue. And I want to be able to leave some imprint as I'm exiting. This exercise of asking brothers to raise their hand if they don't feel safe is it's a formidable way of looking at fraternity life. You're looking at, and then I ask brothers to talk about some of their pain and their issues and their challenges, and they pour out their responses and their feelings. And it's beautiful to see brothers hugging each other and then saying, I never knew that brother was dealing with this. And in my case, the brother that came on Christmas morning changed my life. I want to tell you how grateful I am that you have allowed me to do this video. And I hope that everybody who watches this will see some potential solutions and will continue to look for more solutions. And I promise this video would not be a lengthy video so that people wouldn't be challenged to watch it. But I have a lot more solutions to offer that have substance. Don't wait until something happens to step up, because that's how we live as a society. We're reaction based. We wait until something has occurred, and then we throw in the kitchen sink, and then it's too late. It is too late. The person is gone. Multiple people are gone. The fear is there, and it can be eliminated. Thank you for the opportunity to love the fraternity as much as I do.